The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with light. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of different species sat in their floating chairs. They came from every corner of the known galaxy. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no solid form at all. But today, they all watched the same screen with great interest. Ambassador Kilira stood at the center of the hall. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that glowed softly in the dim light. Her 4 eyes blinked slowly as she waited for silence. Behind her, the massive screen showed images of a small blue planet spinning in the darkness of space. "This," Kilira said, her voice echoing through the hall, "is Earth. The third planet from a yellow star called Sol, and the creatures who live there may be the most dangerous species we have ever discovered." A wave of laughter moved through the crowd. Representatives whispered to each other. Some shook their heads in disbelief. The images on the screen showed primitive cities, simple spacecraft, and beings that looked soft and weak. Grand Overlord Vethrak sat in the highest section of the hall, surrounded by his generals. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with dark purple skin covered in natural armor. His species, the Dominion, had conquered 40 star systems. They had crushed civilizations that existed for millions of years, and now this silver ambassador was asking them to fear a species that had barely learned to leave their own planet. Vethrak laughed loudly enough for the entire hall to hear. Kilira ignored him and continued. "I know what you are thinking. They are young. They are weak. Their technology is primitive, but you must listen to what our scientists have discovered about them." She pressed a button, and the screen changed. It showed a human running, then another human lifting heavy objects, then another swimming through deep water. "Humans are what scientists call persistence predators," Kilira explained. "On their planet, they would hunt animals by following them for hours, days, even. They would not stop. They would not rest. They would simply keep coming until their prey collapsed from exhaustion." The laughter in the hall grew quieter. "Their bodies can repair damage that would kill most species," Kilira continued. "They can survive the loss of limbs. They can survive damage to major organs. They can survive temperatures that would freeze or burn other beings. And they can do something that our scientists still do not fully understand." She paused and looked directly at Vethrak. "They can choose to ignore pain." Silence fell over the hall. "But their physical abilities are not what makes them truly dangerous," Kilira said. "It is their minds. Humans form emotional bonds with everything around them. Their weapons, their vehicles, their pets, even their enemies. Sometimes, these bonds create a loyalty so strong that humans will die for each other without hesitation. They call it love. They call it friendship. We have no translation for these concepts." She changed the image again. This time, it showed human history. Wars, battles, soldiers charging into impossible situations, and then there is the most terrifying thing about them, Kilira said softly. Something called spite. It is the willingness to harm yourself in order to hurt your enemy more. Humans will burn their own cities so their enemies cannot have them. They will crash their own ships into enemy vessels. They will sacrifice everything just to make sure their enemy does not win. Warlord Grenthos, who sat beside Vethrak, leaned forward with interest. But Vethrak simply waved his massive hand in dismissal. "Enough of this nonsense," Vethrak said, standing up. His voice boomed through the hall. "I have heard enough stories about dangerous prey. The Dominion has crushed species far more advanced than these humans. Their little blue planet sits at the edge of valuable space. Space that belongs to the Dominion by right of conquest." Kilira turned to face him. "Grand Overlord, I am issuing a formal warning on behalf of the Galactic Council. Do not engage with the humans. Do not threaten their world. Leave them alone and let them develop in peace. This is not a request. This is an official decree." Vethrak smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The Galactic Council does not give orders to the Dominion. We take what we want. and we want Earth." He turned and walked out of the hall, his generals following behind him. The representatives watched in silence as the Dominion delegation left. Kilira closed her eyes and sighed. She had done everything she could. Now she could only wait and watch. 2 weeks later, a Dominion war fleet of 200 vessels left their home system. Their destination was a small yellow star at the edge of explored space. Their mission was simple: conquer Earth, enslave the humans, take their resources. Vethrak watched from his flagship as the fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. He felt nothing but confidence. This would be an easy victory. Another planet to add to his collection. Another species to serve the Dominion. He had no idea what was waiting for him. On Earth, in a military command center built deep underground, Admiral Sung Ho received the first warning signals. Long-range sensors had detected the approaching fleet, 200 alien warships, all heading directly for Earth. He immediately sent a message to all Earth defense vessels. Every ship, every soldier, every pilot. It was time to prepare for war. Captain Tae-ho was on his ship, the Unyielding Dawn, when he received the message. He read it twice to make sure he understood. 200 enemy ships. Humanity had less than 50 vessels that could fight in space. The numbers were impossible. But Tae-ho did not feel fear. He felt something else. Something that humans had felt for thousands of years. When enemies came to their homes, he felt determination. He gathered his crew on the bridge. Lieutenant Ha-na, his tactical officer, stood at her station with calm eyes. Dr. Woo-jin, the ship's scientist, watched with quiet curiosity. Sergeant Eun-ji, leader of the Marine team, crossed her arms and waited. "You have all seen the reports," Tae-ho said. "An alien empire is coming to conquer our planet. They think we are weak because we are new to space. They think we will surrender because we are outnumbered." He looked at each member of his crew. "They are wrong. We are humans. Our ancestors survived ice ages. They survived plagues. They survived wars that killed millions. And they never gave up. They never stopped fighting, because that is what we do. When someone threatens our home, we stand and fight." Ha-na nodded slowly. Woo-jin adjusted his glasses. Eun-ji smiled in a way that promised violence. "The Galactic Council warned them about us," Tae-ho continued. "They told them not to come here. They told them we were dangerous. And these aliens ignored that warning. So now we will show them why that was the greatest mistake they ever made." The crew cheered. Throughout the ship, the message spread. And across Earth, on every vessel, in every military base, humans prepared for the fight of their lives. The Dominion thought they were coming to claim an easy prize. They had no idea they were walking into a trap set by the most stubborn, most persistent, most spiteful species the galaxy had ever seen. The warning had been given. The warning had been ignored. Now the humans would teach them the truth. The Dominion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 200 warships hung in the darkness of space like a swarm of angry insects. Each ship was larger than anything humans had ever built. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could stop asteroids. Warlord Grenthos stood on the bridge of his command vessel, watching the scanner display. He saw the small blue planet in the distance. So fragile, so unprotected. "This would be over in hours. Open a channel to the planet," Grenthos ordered. "Let them know their new masters have arrived." His communication officer obeyed. Seconds later, Grenthos was broadcasting his message to every receiver on Earth. "Creatures of Earth," he said in a deep, rumbling voice. "I am Warlord Grenthos of the Dominion. Your planet and all its resources now belong to Grand Overlord Vethrak. You will surrender immediately. You will present your leaders for judgment. You will serve the Dominion for the rest of your existence. If you refuse, we will destroy your cities one by one until you obey. You have 1 hour to respond." He ended the transmission and smiled. This was his favorite part. The moment when Prey realized they had no hope. The hour passed in silence. No response came from Earth. Grenthos frowned. This was unusual. Most species begged for mercy within minutes. Perhaps these humans did not understand. Perhaps their primitive technology could not receive his message. "Scan for their military vessels," he ordered. His officers worked their controls. Then, they stopped. Their faces showed confusion. "Warlord," one of them said slowly, "we are detecting small vessels throughout the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets. But they do not match any military configuration in our database." One. What do you mean?" Grenthos demanded. "They appear to be mining ships, transport vessels, civilian craft. But our scanners are showing weapons attached to them. Strange weapons. We cannot identify the design." Grenthos laughed. "They have armed their cargo ships? These humans are more foolish than I thought. Move the fleet forward. Crush them. Crush them." The Dominion fleet advanced toward the asteroid belt. Their formation was perfect. Their confidence was absolute. Then the first ship exploded. No one saw what hit it. One moment it was flying in formation. The next moment it was a ball of fire. Then another ship exploded. And another. "What is happening?" Grenthos shouted. "Unknown projectiles," his officer reported, voice shaking. "They are using the asteroids as cover. We cannot get clear targeting solutions." From behind a massive asteroid, the unyielding dawn emerged at full speed. Captain Tejo sat in his command chair, watching the chaos unfold on his screen. "Hana," he said calmly. "Status report." Lieutenant Hana checked her displays. "Mining ships in position. They are using their drilling lasers as weapons. The enemy shields are not designed to handle that frequency. We are cutting through them like paper. And our modified cargo vessels, launching asteroid fragments at high velocity. The enemy cannot track objects that small, moving that fast." Tejo nodded with satisfaction. Humans could not match the Dominion in technology. So they had done what humans always did. They had improvised. They had turned everything into a weapon. On the Dominion command ship, Grenthos watched in disbelief as more of his vessels burned. These were not military attacks. These were tricks. Traps. The humans were fighting like cornered animals, using every dirty trick imaginable. "Return fire," he ordered. "Destroy those asteroids. Destroy everything." The Dominion ships opened fire. Massive energy beams cut through the asteroid belt, shattering rocks into fragments. For a moment, it seemed like the human ships would be destroyed, but then something impossible happened. A small human vessel flew directly through an explosion. It twisted and turned in ways that defied physics. It pulled maneuvers so sharp that any Dominion pilot would have lost consciousness. But the human pilot kept flying, kept fighting, kept firing. Dr. Wujin watched the battle data on his console. He laughed softly. "They do not understand," he said to Tejo. "Their species cannot handle high-gravity forces. They pass out when their ships turn too quickly. But humans? We have trained for this. We can stay awake through forces that would kill them." Tejo smiled. "Then let us show them what we can do. All ships, engage attack pattern Delta. Get close. Stay fast. Do not give them time to aim." The human fleet moved like water. They flowed around the Dominion ships, striking from every angle. The aliens could not track targets that moved so quickly. Their weapons were designed to fight enemies who flew in straight lines. Humans did not fly in straight lines. On one of the Dominion cruisers, alarms filled the air. A breach had been detected. Enemy soldiers had somehow attached themselves to the hull and were cutting their way inside. Sergeant Unji was the first through the hole. She dropped into a corridor filled with Dominion soldiers. They were twice her size. They had natural armor. They had weapons designed to kill. Unji had a rifle and a knife. She shot the first soldier before he could react. The second one grabbed her arm and twisted. She felt the bone crack. A normal soldier would have screamed, would have fallen, would have stopped fighting. Unji did not stop. She switched her rifle to her other hand and kept firing. The Dominion soldiers froze in shock. This tiny creature had a broken arm. She should be writhing in agony. Instead, she was advancing. She was smiling. She was not stopping. Behind her, more human Marines entered the ship. They moved through the corridors like ghosts. Wounded soldiers kept fighting. Bleeding soldiers kept advancing. Nothing seemed to slow them down. One Marine took a plasma blast to the chest. The shot burned through his armor. He fell to his knees. Then he stood up again. He walked forward. He grabbed the soldier who shot him and broke its neck with his bare hands. Then he collapsed. His squad kept moving. Within an hour, 30 human Marines had captured an entire Dominion cruiser. 500 enemy soldiers were dead or captured. The humans had lost 12 of their own. But those 12 had sold their lives dearly. Each one had taken dozens of enemies with them. On his flagship, Vethrak received the report from Grenthos. He read it 3 times. "They do not surrender," Grenthos said, his voice hollow. "They do not retreat. When we wound them, they do not fall. When we kill them, their companions become more aggressive. Overlord, I have fought many species. I have never seen anything like this." Vethrak felt a cold sensation in his stomach. It was not fear. The Dominion did not feel fear. It was something else. Uncertainty. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "They cannot have many ships. We will overwhelm them with numbers." But as he watched the battle reports coming in, he remembered the words of Ambassador Kalira. He remembered her warning about persistence, about spite, about creatures who would rather die than give up. For the first time, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Captain Tejo stood on the bridge of the unyielding dawn, watching the Dominion fleet regroup. They had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. The enemy still had superior numbers. They still had superior technology, but they did not have superior will. "Send a message to Admiral Singho," Tejo ordered. "Tell him the first phase is complete. We have hurt them. We have confused them. Now we fall back to Earth and prepare for the siege." 1-4, Lieutenant Hana sent the message. Then she looked at her captain. "Sir," she said quietly, "we lost good people today." Tejo nodded. "We did. And we will lose more before this is over." But every one of them knew what they were fighting for. They were fighting for their home, for their families, for the future of humanity. He looked out at the stars. "The Dominion thinks this is just another conquest. They do not understand what they have started. They have come to our home. They have threatened our people. And now they will learn what that means." Outside, the modified civilian ships regrouped around the unyielding dawn. Mining vessels and cargo ships and transport craft, all turned into weapons. All crewed by humans who would rather die than see their world fall. The first blood had been drawn. The aliens had received their first lesson. But the real test was still coming. The siege of Earth was about to begin. The Dominion fleet hung in orbit around Earth like a crown of fire. 160 ships remained, but that was still more than enough to destroy the planet 10 times over. Grand Overlord Vethrak stood on the observation deck of his flagship, staring down at the blue world below. It looked so peaceful from up here, so fragile. He could give one order and turn it to ash, but something held him back. The battle in the asteroid belt had troubled him more than he wanted to admit. His soldiers had been shocked by what they faced. Creatures that did not stop when wounded. Creatures that smiled while bleeding. Creatures that seemed to enjoy the fight. "Open a channel," Vethrak ordered. "One final chance. Perhaps they have learned wisdom." His communication officer obeyed. Vethrak's voice echoed across the planet. "Humans of Earth," he said, "you have shown courage. The Dominion respects courage, but courage alone cannot save you. We have 160 warships above your world. We can destroy your cities from orbit. We can burn your forests and boil your oceans. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to live as servants of the Dominion. Refuse, and you will be erased from the galaxy. You have one planetary rotation to decide. The message ended. Vethrak waited. He did not wait long. Admiral Seung-ho appeared on the screen. He was an older man with gray hair and hard eyes. Behind him, Vethrak could see a room full of military officers. None of them looked afraid. "Grand Overlord," Seung-ho said calmly. "You were warned. The Galactic Council told you not to come here. They told you what we are. You ignored their warning. So now I will give you my own warning." He leaned forward. "You can try to take our planet. You can try to burn our cities. You can try to destroy everything we have built. But you will not succeed. We will fight you in space. We will fight you in our skies. We will fight you in our streets. And when you think you have won, we will rise up and fight you again. Because that is what humans do. We never surrender. We never give up. We never stop." Vethrak felt his anger rising. "You are fools. You will all die." Seung-ho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Maybe we will. But we will take as many of you with us as possible. And when this is over, the entire galaxy will know that the Dominion broke itself against a small blue planet at the edge of nowhere. Now you understand why we were warned about." The transmission ended. Vethrak stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he turned to Warlord Grenthos. "Begin the bombardment. Destroy their major cities. Show them the price of defiance." The Dominion ships opened fire, but the humans were ready. Deep underground, in bunkers built for this moment, billions of humans waited. Cities had been evacuated. Military targets had been hidden. When the Dominion beams struck the surface, they hit empty buildings and abandoned streets. The real defenses were hidden. Anti-orbit missiles launched from secret locations across the planet. They were not as powerful as Dominion weapons, but there were thousands of them. They swarmed toward the fleet like angry insects, too many to shoot down. 3 more Dominion ships fell. Vethrak ordered ground troops to land. If orbital bombardment would not work, they would take the planet by force. Thousands of dropships descended toward Earth, carrying millions of Dominion soldiers. Captain Taeho watched them come from his position in low orbit. His ship was damaged from the earlier battle, but still fighting. "Ha-na," he said. "Target the troop transports. Do not let them land intact." Lieutenant Ha-na nodded and opened fire. Other human ships did the same. They could not stop all the transports, but they could thin the numbers. On the ground, Sergeant Unji waited with her battalion. Her broken arm had been set and wrapped, but she refused to stay in the medical bay. There was fighting to be done. The Dominion troops landed outside a major city. They expected to find civilians cowering in fear. They expected easy targets. Instead, they found hell. Every building had been fortified. Every street had been trapped. Every tunnel led to an ambush. The humans had spent weeks preparing their planet for this moment. They knew every inch of their home. The Dominion knew nothing. Yunji led her soldiers through the underground tunnels, appearing behind enemy lines without warning. They would strike hard, kill quickly, and disappear before the Dominion could respond. Then they would appear somewhere else and strike again. The Dominion commanders did not know how to respond. Their soldiers were trained for open battle, not this kind of fighting. They could not find an enemy to shoot. They could not form proper lines. Every corner hid a threat. Dr. Woojin studied the Dominion prisoners carefully. He had made an important discovery. "Captain," he reported to Taeho, "their command structure is their weakness. Each unit is completely dependent on their commander. If the commander dies, the soldiers become confused. They do not know how to think for themselves." Taeho understood immediately. "So we target their commanders." "Exactly. Humans can operate independently. We can make decisions without orders. But they cannot. Remove their heads, and the body stops moving. The word spread through the human forces. Kill the leaders, the soldiers will follow." The strategy worked devastatingly well. Human snipers targeted Dominion officers. Special forces teams infiltrated enemy positions and assassinated commanders. Without leadership, Dominion units fell into chaos. They stood in the open, waiting for orders that never came, and human soldiers cut them down. On his flagship, Vethrak received report after report of failure. His ground forces were being slaughtered. His orbital bombardment was hitting nothing of value. His soldiers were terrified of an enemy they could not see. And then something happened that shocked him more than anything else. Human civilians were joining the fight. They were not soldiers. They had no military training. But they picked up weapons from fallen enemies and started shooting. Old men and young women. Teachers and farmers. Scientists and artists. They had no experience, but they had something more important. They had rage. The Dominion had come to their home. The Dominion had threatened their families. And now the Dominion would pay. Captain Tejo looked at the tactical display and made a decision. His ship was too damaged for normal combat. But it could still serve one purpose. "Hana," he said. "Calculate a collision course with the Dominion supply station." Hana's eyes widened. "Captain, if we hit them, we will not survive the explosion." "I know. But without their supplies, their fleet cannot maintain the siege. One ship for their entire supply line. It is worth the trade." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member understood what he was saying. He was willing to die to give humanity a chance. Lieutenant Hana looked at her console for a long moment. Then, she looked up with determination in her eyes. "There might be another way," she said. "If we eject our reactor core at exactly the right moment, the explosion will destroy the station. But the ejection force might push us clear. It is a small chance. Maybe 1 in 10. 1 in 10 is better than 0, Tejo said. "Do it." The unyielding dawn accelerated toward the supply station. Dominion ships tried to intercept, but the human vessel was moving too fast. Damage alarms screamed. Systems failed. The hull groaned under stress. At the last possible moment, Hana ejected the reactor core. The explosion was massive. 20 Dominion supply ships vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. The supply station crumbled. And the unyielding dawn, battered and broken but somehow still intact, tumbled away into space. Tejo opened his eyes slowly. He was bleeding. Half his bridge crew was unconscious. But they were alive. "Hana," he whispered. "Status?" Lieutenant Hana pulled herself up from the floor. Her forehead was cut, but she was smiling. "We did it, Captain. The supply station is gone. The Dominion fleet just lost their ability to maintain the siege. Outside, on the surface of Earth, humans looked up at the distant explosion. They saw the light and knew what it meant. Someone had sacrificed everything to give them hope, and they kept fighting." Grand Overlord Vethrak stared at the destruction of his supply line. He had come here expecting easy conquest. He had found something completely different. For the first time in his long life, he felt doubt creeping into his mind. Not fear. Not yet. But doubt. And doubt, as he was about to learn, was just the beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the Dominion fleet arrived at Earth. 3 weeks of constant fighting. 3 weeks of blood and fire and death. And somehow, impossibly, humanity was still standing. The Dominion had lost nearly a quarter of their fleet. Their ground forces had suffered terrible casualties. Their supply lines were destroyed, forcing them to rely on what they had brought with them. And every day, more human ships emerged from hidden shipyards. Every day, more soldiers joined the fight. But the greatest damage was not to the Dominion's military strength. It was to their reputation. Across the galaxy, people were watching. The Galactic Council had broadcast footage of the human resistance to every corner of known space. Billions of beings on hundreds of worlds watched tiny humans stand against the greatest military power in the galaxy. They watched human soldiers fight through wounds that should have killed them. They watched human civilians pick up weapons and join the battle. They watched a species that refused to surrender. And something began to change. On a distant world conquered by the Dominion 30 years ago, a group of rebels gathered in secret. They had given up hope long ago. The Dominion was too powerful. Resistance was pointless. But now they watched a small blue planet defy the undefeatable. "If the humans can fight," their leader said, "then so can we." The first rebellion began that night. Ambassador Keelira sat in her quarters on the Galactic Council station, watching the reports flood in. 3 conquered worlds had risen up against the Dominion. Then 5. Then 10. The rebellion was spreading like fire through dry grass. She sent a private message to Grand Overlord Vethrak. "We warned you," she wrote. "Humans do not just fight, they inspire. Every species you have conquered is watching a small planet stand against your entire fleet. You have shown them that the Dominion can be defied, that your power can be challenged, that your empire can bleed. You came to Earth for resources. Instead, you have started the beginning of your own end." Vethrak read the message and crushed the communication device in his hand. His natural armor cracked under the pressure of his own strength. Around him, his commanders stood in terrified silence. "This changes nothing," Vethrak growled. "We will crush Earth. We will crush the rebels. We will show the galaxy that the Dominion cannot be challenged." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. He had made a terrible mistake. On Earth, the humans did not know about the Galactic Rebellion yet. They were too busy fighting for survival. But they could feel the tide turning. The Dominion attacks were becoming desperate. Their soldiers were fighting with less confidence. Their commanders were making mistakes. Sergeant Unji led her battalion through the mountains outside a major city. The Dominion had established a forward base here, protected by 5,000 soldiers. Her orders were to observe and report. Her plan was different. "There are only 200 of us," one of her soldiers said. "They have 5,000. The numbers are impossible." Yunji smiled. Her arm was still wrapped, still healing, but she did not care. "Impossible is what humans do best," she said. "The Dominion thinks numbers win battles. But they are wrong. Will wins battles. Spirit wins battles. And we have more of both than they could ever understand." They attacked at dawn. The battle lasted 18 hours. 18 hours of constant fighting. Unji led her soldiers through the enemy base, striking at commanders and supply points. Every time the Dominion thought they had surrounded her, she found a way to slip through. Every time they thought she was finished, she appeared somewhere new. One by one, her soldiers fell. But they sold their lives dearly. Each human took dozens of enemies with them. The Dominion soldiers began to fear her. They called her the Demon of the Mountains. They said she could not be killed. When reinforcements finally arrived from the human lines, they found Sergeant Unji standing alone in the center of the ruined base. Hundreds of enemy bodies surrounded her. Her rifle was empty. Her knife was broken. She held a Dominion weapon she had taken from a fallen enemy. Her uniform was soaked with blood, some of it hers, most of it not. Her face was bruised and cut. She had been shot twice, stabbed once, and had not stopped moving. "Sergeant," the reinforcement commander said in shock, "how are you still alive?" Yunji looked at him with tired eyes. "They kept trying to kill me," she said simply. "I refused." Word of her stand spread through the human forces like wildfire. If one soldier could hold against 5,000, what could a planet do? Hope, which had been flickering, began to burn brighter. Admiral Sung Ho called a meeting of all senior commanders. Captain Tae-ho attended from his hospital bed on a recovered station. His injuries from the supply station attack were healing slowly, but his mind was sharp. "We have hurt them," Sung Ho said. "We have confused them. We have inspired rebellion across their empire. But this is not enough. As long as Vethrak remains free, the Dominion will keep fighting. We need to end this." "How?" one of the commanders asked. Tae-ho spoke from his bed. "We capture him. We take Vethrak alive and present him to the galaxy. Show every conquered world that the great overlord who terrorized them for centuries is now a prisoner of the species he tried to destroy." Silence filled the room. "His flagship is heavily defended," another commander said. "We would need to get soldiers aboard. It would be a suicide mission." "Then we find volunteers," Tae-ho said. He pushed himself up despite his injuries. "I will lead the mission myself." Lieutenant Hana stepped forward immediately. I am going with you. Dr. Wu Jin nodded. My knowledge of Dominion physiology could be useful. I volunteer as well. One by one, the crew of the Unyielding Dawn stepped forward. The ship was being repaired, but the crew was ready to fight. Sung Ho looked at them with pride and sadness. He knew what he was asking. He knew many of them would not return. Very well, he said. You have 3 days to prepare. We will launch a major assault on the Dominion fleet to create a distraction. While they are focused on our attack, you will board the flagship. Taeho nodded. Understood, Admiral. Captain, Sung Ho said quietly. What you are doing. The entire galaxy will remember this moment. Whatever happens, know that humanity is proud of you. Taeho smiled. We are not doing this for glory, Admiral. We are doing this because it is necessary. Because if we do not try, everything we have fought for means nothing. He looked at his crew. These men and women who had followed him into impossible battles. These humans who had chosen to stand when they could have run. We will board that flagship, he said. We will find Vethrak, and we will end this war. Hana checked her weapons. Wu Jin gathered his medical supplies. Eunji, against all orders, left her hospital bed and joined them. She could barely walk, but she could still fight. The human fleet began preparations for the final assault. Ships were repaired and armed. Soldiers were briefed. Prayers were said. The Dominion had ignored the warning about humans. They had laughed at the idea that such a small species could threaten them. They had expected an easy conquest. Now they were about to learn the full truth of that mistake. The final battle was coming. And humanity would not lose. The Unyielding Dawn had been repaired enough to fly, but barely. Half its weapons were offline. Its shields were at 30%. Its hull had been patched so many times it looked like a metal quilt, but it was the fastest ship in the human fleet, and that was all that mattered. Captain Taeho stood on the bridge, looking at his crew. Lieutenant Hana at her tactical station. Dr. Wu Jin at the science console. Sergeant Eunji standing against the wall, hiding her pain behind a mask of determination. And 50 other soldiers, the best humanity had, ready to follow him into the heart of the enemy fleet. You all know the plan, Taeho said quietly. The fleet will attack the Dominion formation. While they are distracted, we will fly directly at the flagship. We will crash into their docking bay. And then we will fight our way to Vethrak. He paused. This may be a one-way trip. Many of us may not come home. But what we do today will change history. The galaxy will remember that humans never gave up, never surrendered, never stopped fighting. He looked at each face. I am proud to serve with all of you. The crew responded with silence. Words were not necessary. They knew what they were doing. They had chosen this. Outside, the human fleet assembled. 47 ships against more than 100 Dominion vessels. The numbers were still terrible. But the humans had something the Dominion did not. They had nothing left to lose. Admiral Seung Ho gave the order. The human fleet charged. The battle was chaos. Human ships dove into the Dominion formation, striking from every angle. They took damage. They lost ships. But they kept coming. They kept fighting. They created exactly the distraction Taeho needed. The Unyielding Dawn accelerated toward the flagship at maximum speed. They have seen us, Hana reported. Defensive fire incoming. Evasive maneuvers, Taeho ordered. Get us to that docking bay. The ship twisted and turned through a storm of energy fire. Hana performed calculations faster than any computer, finding the gaps in the enemy's defensive pattern. The hull shook as near misses grazed them. Alarms screamed. Systems failed, but they kept flying. The flagship grew larger in the view screen. Its docking bay opened before them like a giant mouth. Point defense weapons tried to stop them, but the Unyielding Dawn was moving too fast. Brace for impact, Taeho said. The ship crashed into the docking bay in an explosion of metal and fire. The forward section crumpled. Power systems failed. The lights went out. Then emergency lighting flickered on, and Captain Tejo stood up. "Everyone out," he ordered. "Move, now." The crew poured out of the broken ship and into the flagship's docking bay. Dominion soldiers were rushing toward them, weapons raised. The fight had begun. Yunji was the first into battle. Despite her injuries, she moved like water through the enemy lines. Her rifle fired in precise bursts. Every shot found its target. Behind her, human marines advanced with the same deadly efficiency. Dr. Wujin stayed close to Tejo, directing them toward the command deck. "This way," he said. "Their layout follows a predictable pattern. Vethrak will be in the central chamber." They fought through corridor after corridor. Dominion soldiers fell before them. But the humans took casualties too. Men and women who had survived weeks of fighting died in those dark hallways. Each death made the survivors fight harder. The Dominion soldiers began to retreat. They had heard the stories. These humans did not stop. These humans could not be frightened. These humans were more terrifying than anything the Dominion had ever faced. Finally, Tejo and his surviving team reached the doors to the command chamber. Massive metal barriers blocked their way. "Hana," Tejo said, "can you open these?" Lieutenant Hana was bleeding from a cut on her face, but she smiled. "Give me 1 minute." She worked the control panel, while the others held the corridor against reinforcements. 60 seconds felt like hours. But finally, the doors began to open. Grand Overlord Vethrak stood in the center of his command chamber, surrounded by his elite guard. He was even more massive than Tejo had imagined. His natural armor gleamed in the dim light, his eyes burned with cold fury. But he was not attacking. He was waiting. Tejo walked into the chamber alone. No weapons in his hands. Just a human standing before the most powerful warlord in the galaxy. "You came all this way," Vethrak said slowly. "Crashed your ship into my flagship. Lost half your soldiers. Just to reach me." Tejo nodded. "For what?" Vethrak demanded. "You cannot win. Even if you kill me, my fleet will still destroy your planet. You have accomplished nothing." Tejo looked at the alien overlord calmly. "You still do not understand," he said. "You think this is about winning, about survival. But you are wrong. This is about showing the galaxy who we are, what we are willing to do." He took a step forward. "You can kill me. My crew will still come for you. You can kill them, and the next wave will come. You can destroy our fleet, and we will build another. You can burn our planet, and we will fight from the ashes. Another step. That is what you never understood about humans. We do not know how to give up. It is not in our nature. We will keep fighting until we win, or until every single one of us is dead. And even then, our example will inspire others." Vethrak stared at this small creature standing before him. No fear. No hesitation. Just absolute, unshakable will. Warlord Grenthos moved toward Tejo, weapon raised. "Let me kill him. Overlord, let me end this." Vethrak raised his hand. "No." Grenthos stopped, confused. Vethrak looked at Tejo for a long moment. He saw something in those human eyes, something his species had no concept for, something that could not be conquered or destroyed. The doors burst open. Hana and Unji entered with the remaining soldiers. The elite guard fell within minutes, and Vethrak did nothing to stop it. When the fighting ended, the Overlord stood alone in the center of his command chamber. His guards were dead. His ship was breached. His fleet was crumbling outside. "I surrender," he said quietly. The words echoed through the chamber. The most powerful warlord in the galaxy, conqueror of 40 systems, was surrendering to humans. Tejo nodded slowly. "That is the smartest decision you have made since you came to our system." The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The mighty Dominion Overlord was in human custody. His fleet was retreating. The siege of Earth was over. Humanity had won. On conquered worlds throughout the Dominion Empire, rebels celebrated. The symbol of their oppression had fallen. If humans could bring down Vethrak, anything was possible. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of worlds watched as Ambassador Kylira addressed the assembly. "We warned them all," she said. "We told them what humans were. They did not listen. And now the galaxy has changed forever." Captain Tejo stood before the council as humanity's representative. He was still wearing his damaged uniform. His wounds were still healing. But he stood straight and proud. "What does humanity want?" a council representative asked. "You have proven yourselves. You could claim Dominion territory. You could demand payment for your losses. What do you want?" Tejo thought for a moment. "We want peace," he said. "We did not ask for this war. We did not want to fight. We only wanted to be left alone." "Peace," he looked around the great hall. "But we are very, very good at war. Remember that." The hall fell silent. "Do not threaten us again," Tejo continued. "Do not underestimate us. Do not ignore warnings about us. Because we will never stop fighting for what is ours. That is not a threat. That is a promise." He turned and walked out of the hall. In the years that followed, a saying spread throughout the galaxy. When species were tempted to attack weaker enemies, when empires considered conquest, when warlords dreamed of easy victories, they would hear the same words. "Remember the humans." It became a warning. A reminder. A lesson written in the blood of those who had ignored it. The Dominion had come to Earth expecting easy prey. They found something else entirely. They found a species that turned mining ships into weapons. A species that smiled while bleeding. A species that would rather destroy everything than surrender. They found humanity. And that discovery had been their greatest mistake. On Earth, years after the war, Captain Tejo stood on a hillside overlooking a rebuilt city. Hana stood beside him. Wujin was somewhere in his laboratory. Yunji had retired to train the next generation of soldiers. They had survived. Humanity had survived. "Do you think they will leave us alone now?" Hana asked quietly. Tejo watched the sun set over the city. Children played in the streets. Families gathered for dinner. Life continued. "They will," he said. "They learned their lesson." He smiled. "And if they forget, we will teach them again."